It's 1990, and my friend and I can't stop laughing. We're watching a movie that we've seen a dozen times before. It's called Little Monsters. Little Monsters is a movie about Howie Mandel playing a monster who lives under Fred Savage's bed. We've seen it many times, we've laughed many times, and we're still laughing now. Now, we're really soaking up this movie, even though I've been given instructions that as soon as this movie's over, I'm to leave my friend's house and go home. Now, that didn't matter. That didn't bother us. We still enjoyed this movie again for the 13th time. Now, movie ended. I finished up. I went home. No big deal. The fact that the movie was going to end and the end of that movie meant that the fun was over, it did not impact our enjoyment of the movie. It did not impact our enjoyment of that experience. Now, I recognize that this is just a simple example about a movie, but as I'm looking back on this, I can envision a situation where I really didn't want to go home. I really didn't want the fun to end. And the end of the movie meant that the fun was over. So I can imagine myself being so worried that this movie was going to end that I totally missed out on the experience of watching the movie. I would have had to go home anyways. The fun would have ended anyways. But I would have missed out on actually having fun. Now remember, that's a small example, but this whole big idea applies to life. And what I mean by that is we're going to die. What happens to us after we die is both unknown and unknowable. The only thing we know for sure is that this is what we have right now. And the same thing applies. If we spend our time being afraid of death, if we spend our time trying to ignore the fact that we're going to die, we might miss out on the opportunity to actually live. Find out more right after this. Hey, it's Derek Hagan. I'm a financial therapist coming to you with another Money Health presentation where we're going to talk about money, life, and regrets. Now, life is short. There's no doubt about it. And the idea that we're trying to create for ourselves is to live intentionally. The more intentionally we live, the fewer regrets we're going to have because we did this on purpose. And as a byproduct, you can see the opposite is the more meaning we're going to find in our lives. Now, this is different from living reactionally, or reacting to everything that life throws our way. When we're reacting, we're over here. That's a life full of regret with not much meaning because we're just lost in life. Right? We're just worried, hoping to get through the next minute of the movie. Now, remembering that life is short, if we can keep this in mind, that gives us more gratitude. That helps us realize that we ought to be grateful that we have this life. We were lucky enough to be given this life. And the more we remember how fragile this is and how short this is, the more gratitude we're going to have for life. And you've seen this before. You've read about this before. Somebody has a near-death experience or suddenly loses a close loved one. That brings them face to face with Reaper and helps them reprioritize their life. Otherwise, we're spending our lives taking it for granted, ignoring the fact that we're going to die, completely ignoring it. But if we can keep that in mind, then we can experience gratitude, because gratitude is the antidote to taking our life for granted. Now, a word of caution. Many people hear, what's that you said? Oh, yes, we're going to die. Therefore, YOLO, Y-O-L-O. It's got this shortened, cutesy little abbreviation. You only live once. And people get a lot of this right. It's true. You do only live once. It's true that this is the one life we have and we should not waste it. Right? It's true that we should keep the end in mind, and it's true that we should not put off living our lives. That's kind of half of what YOLO is about. The other half, though, that they get wrong is that YOLO, you only live once, doesn't apply to just today. Right? Too many people will think, okay, well, if I got to live like I'm dying, think about that for a second. Live like I'm dying. And then the timeline gets cut off because I died right there. Right? Oops, sorry about the zooming in business. So live like you're dying means this is going to end. Now, of course, tomorrow's not guaranteed, but it's probable that there's going to be many different versions of you, many different versions of you. You can't consume all the resources saying, I'm only going to live once, and then leave the rest of the versions of you to suffer. Okay? YOLO is taken out of context. And let's talk about regret. We all know what regret feels like. It feels like that's that thing that you wish you would have done, or that thing that you did that you maybe didn't want to do. Now, I'm kind of mixing regret and remorse together, but I wish I would have done something different, right? We don't want to necessarily avoid regret. Regret can be useful. Right? Regret has useful information for us. It tells us, it informs us that we did something wrong, or we could do something different and better next time. Okay, so just having a regret isn't a failure. Leaving that situation without the lesson, that's the failure. So you can use that lesson to apply, that regret to apply lessons. It also helps you build resiliency. There's an idea that kids should eat more dirt. Kids should eat dirt because they'll get more germs and they'll get sick in the short run, but they'll get a solid immune system in the long run. In much the same way, regret, among other things, helps build resiliency. And it feels like we're sick in the short run. Nobody likes feeling these feelings of regret. But because it builds resiliency, it gives us a stronger so-called psychological immune system in the future. Because those are good uses of regret. You can be grateful for regret. What you don't want to do is beat yourself up. What you don't want to do is ruminate. Just replay the situation over and over again. Talking to yourself, saying, man, let's go over that conversation again. Here's what I could have done different. Who are you talking to? You're talking to yourself. You already know that, or you wouldn't be able to talk about it. Waste of your time, not a good use of regret. Now, we already know that the past can't be changed, right? So you can't do anything about that past regret except learn from it, but you're still going to feel that regret. The future, however, hasn't happened. So you do have the opportunity to minimize what might be future regret. And how do you do that? Ask a future version of you, specifically the last future version of you. There may be a time when you're on your deathbed looking back on your life. And it's common for people to have regrets when they look back on their life because they're now right front and center looking Grim Reaper right in the eyes. That's it. This is it for me now. I don't have any more time. Man, I wish I would have lived differently. And some of the top regrets are I didn't live true to who I was. I lived the life somebody else wanted me to live. I lived the life that I wanted to showcase on social media. I tried to keep up with the Joneses. I let my bosses dictate my life to me. I worked too hard, or I didn't express myself. I didn't keep up with my friends. I didn't hang out with my family more. I mislived. So what if we can do something now? What if we can instill those future regrets now? What if we can talk to or imagine ourselves on our deathbed looking back on a life that we're proud of? And ask our future self, what would have happened between here and here that this beautifully designed life ended with the fewest regrets possible? And now that you know what those are, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're telling future you, hey, what do you regret? Either way, you now know. You can do something about it now. Right? And you can live intentionally. You can build a life. You can design a life. You can understand what your money's for. And you can use it in a way that you're going to be proud to look back on. You're going to look back and say, I would have done that 100 times out of 100. Because I don't regret anything. You only have one life. Live intentionally.